Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Friday's live session for the new series, The Swiss Recruitment Journeys, live from the home office in the heart of Zurich, together with my guest today, Gareth Rose. Morning, Gareth. Can you hear me okay?
Morning, Lee. Very well, thanks.
Perfect. And weekend just around the corner. The sun is shining, so I don't think there's much more we can ask for today. So for those of you who know me, don't know me, quick introduction on my side. So my name's Lee Diamond, and I've been living in Switzerland for the last 18 years now. I've been working in recruitment for the last 13 years and am the owner of We Recruit. And we are a recruitment expert for the Swiss market. So placing professional recruiters, consultants, also people within executive search and within the talent acquisition and HR market here in Switzerland. And as always, my goal is to add value, to be able to promote and be a positive promoter of recruiters, of recruitment as a whole, waving the flag across the country, and especially for the Swiss market. So for me, what's really cool about these recruitment journeys is to have people in Switzerland telling us about their career. Today, we're going to get some insights and reflections about leadership in recruitment, about Gareth's journey. Gareth has more than 15 years experience in recruitment and leadership, so more than myself. He's led teams, fair to say, all across Europe, in the UK, in Switzerland, Netherlands, France, Belgium, probably easier to name the places he hasn't led teams, and also all of this within the life science industry. And currently he is the regional director, head of life science for Europe at NES Fircroft. Based in Switzerland, and I think the office opened in June 2019 in Switzerland, so I think it's fair to say it's exciting times for Gareth and the team at NES. So with that, Gareth, let me hand the word over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate it, and thanks for the nice words and intro. So my career saw me start at S3 as a trainee recruitment consultant back in 2005, and unknown to me and unknown to S3 as well, I ended up being actually their first life science recruiter globally. So at that point, there wasn't necessarily design or a plan around the sector. And over the 13 years I was with S3, I progressed into different positions of responsibility. Where like you said, I grew teams in the UK first of all. Then I took over a permanent division in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. I think I'd been in recruitment for about 2.5 years at that point when I moved to the Netherlands, and I was there for a year, literally 365 days, and then was off to Germany for the next part of my journey. I was there for about 2.5 years, and that scenario was building a completely new office. So I'd set up a new market essentially in the UK. Then I took over something in the Netherlands, and then I set up a new sales affiliate essentially in a country where we already had other staff. And then a bit further down the line was the move to Switzerland, and at that point it was a completely new venture. We didn't have a business entity in Switzerland. We did have some sales in Switzerland, but it was an opportunity, I suppose, to get more involved in the holistic running of the business, rather than just the sales or just the customer development and the recruitment. It was a step into the world of interacting with finance, marketing, and trying to form a strategy that we could move forwards with. So that's been the journey so far. And at a certain point, I had the chance to become involved again with some of those countries that I'd worked with previously, although in a slightly different capacity. So that's how things evolved.
Awesome. Well, we'll get into that a little bit further in the conversation about the different countries, and I'm keen to know some of the challenges and things there. I guess what I would like to start with on these sessions, you know, coming away a little bit from where you are today, you know, when you were younger, growing up, young Gareth, you know, what did you want to be when you were young?
When I was a young child, I mean, they say that everyone's a product of their environment, right? And growing up in Wales in the kind of mid '80s, there was a lot of things in the news about mining, and there was you know, growing up in North Wales, it's a semi-rural environment. So as a young kid, I can remember pretending to tunnel behind the sofa and wanting to be a miner, right? And yeah, you know, and having farms all around us, you know, that seemed pretty cool, you know. So yeah, I wanted to be a miner or a farmer. And you know, as things grew on, you know, one's aspirations and ambitions shift a bit, don't they? And you know, by the time I was in university, I was quite set. You know, sometimes people kind of get to their last years in university and they're not sure what direction they want to go into. And I didn't really have that challenge. I loved my studies. I really embraced my studies, and I loved, and I still do love literature. Right. You know, I like to geek out on old books, really, and that was the direction that I thought I was set in, right, to become an academic, to the point that, you know, I had it all lined up. I had the courses lined up, post graduation, etc. I suppose that the fallback was going to be publishing, right? So it's still really related to literature. But that was career plan number one.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. But then something happened along the way, and you found yourself ending up in recruitment. So yeah, I mean, tell us about that. How did you get into recruitment?
Yeah, I mean, it was like so many people. You know, you kind of you find recruitment and then realize that it's right for you, I suppose. But I found recruitment via this drive to return to academia. So when I graduated, I'd been accepted for an English literature master's degree, and I had the theme set and everything. I was going to do it in 18th century poetry, believe it or not.
Wow. Okay.
Around Enlightenment poets, right, and applying theories of knowledge to that. Yeah. Anyway, but the considerable challenge I had at that time was there's not a great deal of funding around to you know, to enable people to be as intellectually indulgent into something that really might not have much of a commercial or industrial value in the long term. So I didn't have the funding available for it, and I was still in Sheffield, working in a sales job, right, working in a job at the end of my studies before graduating, where I would call companies and book customer meetings on behalf of another big company. And it was something that I was quite good at as well. I was able to get the bookings and to make it work. And since I was 16, I'd actually been doing different jobs in sales or with a customer focus. So when I was still in high school, right, studying for my A levels, or the Abitur equivalent, the Matura equivalent, I had a job in a local mountain bike shop where my job was to fix bikes and to sell them. And I was much better at selling them than I was as a mechanic, right? Yeah. And then once I was at university, that qualified me for other, you know, kind of customer orientated or sales positions, and I kept doing them, all the way through my degree. So at a certain point, I knew that my ambition was to fund. Well, it was academia, but the problem was I needed to fund that. I had some friends that were moving to London, and in my lunch break from this job I was doing in Sheffield at the time, I literally Googled graduate careers, and top of the list that day was S3.
Okay.
Graduate careers in London. During my lunch break, I only had time to apply for one position, and and that was the company that I ended up spending 13 years with. Right.
Crazy.
yeah, that was my journey in.
So, I mean, just continuing on that, were there times, did the career just kind of develop and you found yourself to be successful and enjoying it and obviously making good money and reaping the rewards? Did you ever think, okay, now I have some money kind of saved up, I can invest more time into the academia direction that you wanted to go?
Yeah, so I deferred after being accepted to do this master's degree. As soon as I'd been accepted for it, I deferred for a year, which meant that I could go back in a year without applying again and restart.
Mm-hmm.
And after the first year, the letter came, right, as a reminder that I'm enrolled in to start this degree. Three of them actually at the time, one in London, one in Sheffield, and I forget where the other one was, but I was enrolled for the three of them. But with I just ticked the box, right, to defer again for another year. I was enjoying it, and it was really starting to go well. And I was seeing, it really captured my imagination, having had this opportunity as being one of the first people in the life sciences. And I'd worked hard at it, and I was just starting to see where we could go, and the horizons were really broadening. And I started to make plans, right, of what we could do with the division. Yeah, and then the next year came around, 24 months later, and again I opened the prospectus, and I'd almost kind of forgotten about it at that point. But at that stage, I just thought, no, it's not really. I love to do it, but I don't think that's my path anymore, or at least not for the next years. Not for the next years. So I did. Yeah, at that point, I withdrew my enrollment. Yeah, and I dropped a note to my favourite lecturer and kind of explained that I was enjoying myself and going to keep going on that path, but I promised to keep reading books.
Yeah. And have you? I assume it's still a big hobby of yours, or?
I guess I read a lot. Yeah, but I don't, and I really still appreciate good literature. Quite. Developments being made in narrative style and stuff. I don't really touch poetry anymore, to be quite honest. It's it's gone out of it's fallen off my radar. But most of the books that I'm reading at the moment are more to do with someone used the word biohacking with me the other day, but I suppose it's more about personal performance, or the relationship between the body and performance. And that's an area that wasn't previously that much interest to me. But we all grow and develop and have different interests, and it reflects that journey that I've been going on for the last few years, which I think you have as well, to some extent. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we before the session we were talking a little bit about getting fit, about weight loss, about performance through these things as well. And I think we could do a whole nother session about the benefits and things that you can gain from fitness and how it can reflect to performance and things. But we will stay on the Swiss recruitment journey this time round. Put a pin in it for next time. But we were talking before, you mentioned about the different countries, places that you have, worked, built teams, led teams, interacted with teams. And this is a really interesting question for me to hear your answer on, because I'm dealing with candidates from all over Europe. I see that there's differences in the markets. There's differences in the way that people interact with clients, the availability of candidates, the style and approach that companies make. So I'm really keen to hear your views on this. I mean, so talking about the different countries, which country presented the most difficulty in terms of kind of building business and building teams, would you say?
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a cop-out, but they were, because I can't really say which one presented the most difficulties, because they all had quite unique challenges, right? And to some extent, I think that the challenges that I felt in each of the countries kind of represented where I was at in my career at the time as well. You know, in each of the moves I made, it was primarily driven by career development, right? And the chance to do something broader or bigger or deeper, and a chance to move out of my comfort zone. Yeah, and each of those scenarios, I suppose it was a different personal challenge. Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, I think the challenges of growing businesses or developing teams in each of the countries are the same, right? We're doing recruitment in all of these places, but the way that we've got to adapt, and the way that we've got to maybe plan or strategize or communicate with our customers, candidates and clients, the way that we've got to treat our employees and develop an environment where people can thrive and flourish and develop and be challenged, but in a positive way. I think there's different flavors that apply to each one of those. So, I mean, for me in the UK, then I was at a point where I was taking my first steps into recruitment, and then my first steps into management. Yeah, and there, I mean, I was essentially, I suppose, I was learning by copying, and I was imitating other people's styles, right? Yeah. And at that point, I was very much involved in the detail, really, you know, trying to drive the highest possible performance at all times in all possible avenues. And I suppose that kind of fueled some of the challenges that I experienced. You know, individual people are unique, and they need a unique and a personalized approach, really, you know, in the way that they're supported and developed and communicated with. Yeah. Then in the Netherlands, stepping into something that was already running, where I was, you know, I was essentially the new boss. Yeah. And I was the youngest team member by quite a way, right? Yeah. With no experience of business in the Netherlands or Belgium. So there, I think actually gaining credibility was a challenge, and being authentic, in that environment, you know, with those idiosyncrasies. And going to Germany after that, it was more about adapting to culture. You know, I think after the time I'd had in the Netherlands, I felt like I was worldly, I was internationally experienced, right? But after that year, in a country where so many people were speaking English, and you know, they're very culturally and communicatively, you know, the Netherlands is quite direct, and that can respond well to this type of performance-focused, quite direct communication style. Moving to Germany, where attitudes are sometimes a little more conservative and different, you know, that it's a Saxon environment. It's Germanic. It's not the UK. It's not the Netherlands. It's unique. Yeah, and I think I really underestimated the importance of adapting one's approach beyond that. You know, you can't just copy and paste and, you know, take one approach and drop it in somewhere else and expect to have the same results. So so each was unique in its own way.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a mixture probably between the cultures of the different markets, the cultures of the companies to try and adapt to, but also to bring your own style and way in. And yeah, I know the challenges that it is going to a new company as well, and, you know, trying to build up that credibility without, you know, because when you move perhaps from one country to another, it can be hard, or from one company to another, it can be hard sometimes to, you know, immediately make that impact, because perhaps in the UK they would have, you know, seen all of the success you had, the placements, the you know, what you'd done there, so you'd already built up that credibility. Then you go to a new place where you're the youngest, you know, and you're there to tell them how to do it. And again, you know, you need to obviously lead from the front, but these are challenging things, I think, as a leader in recruitment. When you inherit teams, when you know, move to a different country or to a different company where you're not a known entity, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So at what point in your career did you learn the most? and why?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think, reflecting on the last 15 years, the big personal growth has really happened at times where I was outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right. But at times where I was outside my comfort zone, and I was also in an environment where I was almost free to make mistakes. Right.
Yeah.
I don't mean I didn't have accountability for the mistakes that I made.
Yeah.
That's very different. But the environment was one where you were encouraged to try. You were encouraged to develop, and there was some support and some structure within that, and an acknowledgement that we're not going to get it right every time, but we're still accountable to get it right. But we've got to try and go and do this, right? And those points have been awesome. When you're working with somebody that backs you to go and have a go at doing something new, and and where you're just on the edge of what you're able to do. You know that you're confident to do, and you're also touching things that you think you can do, but you might not have had the chance to do them before. So that's been it. I mean, at times, right, you kind of end up in scenarios, and I don't know if this is something that you can relate to, but you can end up in scenarios where you are outside of your comfort zone, but you don't necessarily have that license to have a go and to make mistakes anyway. Maybe the environment around you is going to beat you up a bit, for getting wrong.
Less forgiving, let's say. Yeah. I mean, I've had it in different. There's a couple of things you said in there that I can really relate to. I think certainly being out of your comfort zone is when it's you hear it everywhere. It's kind of where the magic happens, or where the growth and development happens. And I experienced that for sure in my kind of first year. When I moved to Randstad to head up the Zurich office. So I went from managing 3 people to managing 12 to grow it to 20. That first year was a brutal and hard learning curve. Luckily, my boss and also the CEO at the time were really of the mindset of, you're free to make mistakes, and I take it also in my leadership style, the way that I manage people as well, and have managed my teams. And I think about it like snowboarding, and I always say that if you're not falling over, then you're not trying hard enough to develop yourself, to become a better snowboarder. And it's the same in business and any sport or anything that you do. If you're not making mistakes, if you're not falling over, then you're not trying hard enough to do something different or to push yourself. So I always kind of have that in my mind. I think is a good visualization for the consultants and recruiters as well. We've got to try things. There's no set one way that works or doesn't work. I think people need to find their way and to be able to make those mistakes. So absolutely agree with you about being outside of the comfort zone for sure. Yeah, that's where it happens. Yeah, absolutely. So we've touched on the fact. I mean, you were there at S3 for 13 years. Did you? Was it overall a long time, especially in recruitment? Retention in recruitment and people staying in one organization is a huge topic in our business. And I think every industry, every recruitment company has their own challenges around it. But you were there for a long time. Why did you decide now to join NES, to make that change? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I had a great time, right? I had an awesome time at S3, and I've got huge levels of respect for the business, and I've got some lifelong friends as well. That either I worked with there, or some of them are still there. And the experience and the development that I went through with the organisation was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so I just say that first of all. For me, it was about career development, really. I was in a position where I had certain career development opportunities still, even after 13 years, within S3, and but the scale and the size of the organisation had become such that there was a lot of jobs already being done, I suppose. Yeah, a lot of things that were already being occupied, and I was actually sat in front of a position that was global in scope, right? That really leveraged a lot of the strengths that I have individually, and it and it was I think it would have been something very impactful for the organisation overall. But I was still very keen to further explore the direct leadership route, right, rather than necessarily a customer focused role. And it was that really that led me to NES. I mean, I suppose it was that led me to look for other career development opportunities. And then the reason that I joined NES specifically would be about the aspirations and the ambitions that we have in the life science sector. NES is actually the world's largest engineering staffing business and the world's largest oil and gas staffing firm as well, with global presence, with a pretty spectacular platform for us to deploy solutions to customers around the world, and to grow people's careers within as well. But in Europe, our presence in the life sciences, is quite a way behind our presence in some sectors at the moment. So the opportunity to really lead this forwards, to take it to that position of being a top 5 in life science staffing services in Europe, it was that really that provided the magnetism for me to come on board and again have a vision that we work towards and get excited about and do those things day in, day out that will see us to get there eventually.
So that ambition to grow and develop the business across Europe. I mean, it's been crazy to see also the last year or so, the development and growth here in Switzerland. So I can understand the hunger and desire for that opportunity. And it's the momentum is there, and it's going that way as well at the moment. We've got 4 life sciences offices across Europe right now, and we're about 20 people, and the momentum and the pace of growing that is continuing into the next couple of years, and that's despite COVID as well. So I've been with NES now, I think 18 months, and of that, now 12 or 13 months has been in the COVID scenario too. So not the start that I expected, but we're doing it anyway. But I think luckily I think you're in one of the industries least affected, and for some organisations, obviously positively affected by COVID and this pandemic. I think if I look at my business over the last year or so, it's certainly been mostly within recruiting recruiters within the life science and kind of tech IT space. So you're definitely in the right area to be, for sure, and certainly having a base in Switzerland with all of the headquarters and all of the startups happening here, I think it's probably a great place to be.
Absolutely, real pockets of opportunity right now.
Absolutely,
The chance to contribute to some of those cures or therapies of COVID as well is, personally, and for our teams, for our consultants that are involved in these projects, it's quite fulfilling. I've got to say, it's quite meaningful and gives us some purpose to be a part of the solution, hopefully. In our own little.
I think that's a really nice, kind of underlining point as well, is that, within the industry you're working with companies that are really making an impact and a change in the world, so to speak. And, I know when I've worked with companies before, who are working on potential cures for things that, are quite meaningful to me, or that I've had experience with in the past through, family members or however it may be. It's always, a nice added bonus to be able to support those companies, for sure. So, let's talk about the kind of getting to where you are today. And I don't know if it's if you're able to kind of point it down to a key moment, key defining moment that helped lead you to where you are today. Maybe there's more than one, but yeah, if I ask you the question, kind of what was your key defining moment, what would you say that is?
Yeah, sure thing. I suppose there's been a few, and it kind of does a decision tree out to present day. But the first one was definitely doing that lunch break Google search when I was in Sheffield, right, and clicking apply here, I guess. I suppose from there on, it was turning down the masters for the second time and making it my vocation. Making
a decision.
Embracing it and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. After that point, I suppose was saying, yes, I will move from London, right? I will move away from the UK, and do something that's a bit scary, and go somewhere where I didn't have any friends, I didn't have any experience, and it's, in terms of getting out of your comfort zone, it was a big jump. It was a long way out of my comfort zone, right? And then the decision to say yes to Germany as well was big. Whilst I was in Germany, I was offered the chance to start again, essentially by setting up a contracts business, a temp staffing business. And again, it felt like starting again, but I said yes to it, and little did I know that in the future, that experience of setting up a temps business would lead to so many more opportunities as well. And then I think finally saying yes to, well, it's not finally, saying yes to Switzerland in the same vein, another move outside my comfort zone. And then I guess the more recent key defining moment was about 3 years ago. I went through, in quick succession, I went through a couple of life events, right, that I suppose, made me more aware of certain things. And the life events where I broke my back. I broke 4 vertebrae in my back over Christmas.
Wow.
And then whilst I was still in a back brace and still off work, I got a call from the UK and had to go back because my dad passed away quite quickly.
Okay.
Right. So that was like life event number 2, right, within a few weeks. And then life event number 3 was the birth of my youngest son, right, 2 weeks after my dad passed away. And all these events kind of hit you in quick succession, or they hit me, and you've obviously got to process them, and I was still recovering.
Of course.
I went back to work about 50% for another month before I could work full time after breaking my back. And I suppose what this did for me on a personal level was it actually gave me energy, right? It gave me a lot of energy, and it reshifted my focus a bit as well. And I've always been, I suppose, quite aware of my own resilience and backed my own ability to get through things and to persevere. But this kind of reminded me that, well, do you know what? If you can do that, then don't be scared. Life can be tough sometimes, but if you can get through the difficult challenges and maintain confidence, a belief in yourself and a bit of elasticity and resilience, then you can try and do the things that you want to do. So why not? So that led to me, really committing to, I suppose, the next 12 months, right, in the job, to see where it would go. But then it got to that scenario about career opportunities and career development again. So they're probably the key moments in my career so far.
But that's a crazy and tough few weeks, and obviously on one side, physically having to go through rehabilitation to recover, and then the mental challenge that was involved, and then I know myself as a parent, the physical, mental challenge of having having a newborn and not sleeping so much, and still having to do all of your work and find energy during the day as well. So yeah, kudos to you. I mean, it must have been a really challenging time, but I think also defining moments like that maybe give us or kind of trigger in our minds time to kind of reflect, to think about things, to decide, okay, is this how I want my career, my life, things to go forward. And it's interesting to hear that over the next year, then a lot of things obviously developed and happened in your thought process as well. So I'm sure there's some links there with that.
Yeah. I think in life and in one's career, it's the tough times that really shape you and form your abilities and clarify your focus, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot for sharing that. I definitely learned something new there, for sure.
No worries. Yeah, no worries.
Right. So, let's touch on this. I mean, maybe there was thoughts, during that time. Did you ever think about quitting recruitment? Was it ever a topic for you? No.
Yeah. It has been. I mean, it wasn't at that time, and transparently, it's not been, in recent history, I suppose. But there was a couple of moments where I definitely did. So one was quite early in my career when I was still in the UK.
Okay.
And there was a very big buzz around the banking industry at the time, and I was intrigued. I must admit, I was really intrigued to see what could be my path, right, in the banking industry. I was just surrounded by it. So I was quite interested, and the way that played out, my first mentor and my first direct manager in recruitment, a lady called Denise Morris, who's one of the most talented recruiters I think I've ever worked with. She, I think she had a word with a more senior guy, and he sat me down and talked me through, I suppose, where I sat in the organisation, what the prospects were, and and how one's career can grow and develop. And I've always been quite long term in my ambitions and my goals, I suppose, and this really resonated with me. And I think it was the missing link between my monthly performance and where I sat, in sales leagues, with understanding how I could turn this day-to-day performance into an actual career, right? That could persist and perpetuate in the long term. So that was that was quite important for me. And the other point is a lot more romantic, but not quite as career focused. So in Germany, my girlfriend and now wife moved over to join me, and we'd met in New Zealand. I was on a snowboarding holiday, and she was doing back-to-back ski seasons. Right, she was coming to Europe, doing a ski season, going to the southern hemisphere to
the endless winter.
Exactly. I think she'd done 5 back-to-back at that point. And
fantastic.
That's the dream, eh? But all of a sudden, she was in Frankfurt and away from this, and we were thinking, wouldn't it be great for us to be able to go and experience something like that together? And it wasn't available. So I was thinking, should I just go and do a ski season, and then maybe come back to recruitment afterwards? And I don't know. I probably would never have come back. I think to go through that mid-career and then go back is it's going to be a big challenge. So we didn't do it. We didn't do it. What we did do is find a great group of mates in Frankfurt that, like my wife and I, wanted to have a release at the weekend and have a different kind of scene at the weekend, and we travelled to the Alps at the weekend. And little did I know, it felt like a sacrifice at the time, but by sticking it out, it wasn't that much later. It was probably another 15 months later. I was offered the chance to actually move to Switzerland, where you don't have to do a ski season to have snow sports and mountain life as part of your everyday life. So short-term sacrifice for long-term reward there, definitely.
And I mean, Switzerland, I'm sure now, as you know, both snow lovers, yourself and your wife, is a fantastic place to be, right? I don't know, could you imagine yourself being in another country now, or are you at that stage of your Swiss lifestyle?
Do you know what? Switzerland is now home, yeah, but I could still imagine spending time elsewhere, but probably more on an interim basis, you know, with a 12 or 24 month perspective in order to achieve something before then coming back and you know, moving back to Switzerland. And you never know. I mean, at the end of one's career, you know, when other family pressures or such might come into play, then, you know, I'd never say never, but I've been in Switzerland for 10 years for a reason, and that's because I like it. I feel at home here. I'm settled here. My children are growing up speaking Schweizerdeutsch, going to the local school. Probably will be a temporary move I did rather than a permanent one.
Yeah, no, I get. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Switzerland, and you know, I think I once heard in it was in a presentation. I think I was asked at the time by Baxter to come and present at one of their events to do with the international dual network career. I think it is for spouses of people who work there, talking about contracting and how to get into contracting and all of the intricate details about it. And there was a gentleman who presented there, and he said something once which really resonated with me. He said that, you know, Switzerland had nothing I wanted, but everything I needed. And that's just that sentence has stayed with me for so many years. You know, it must have been 5, 6, 7 years ago that I heard that, and it resonates with me so much. And I think we're very fortunate. One of the best places in the world to be, in my opinion. But,
yeah, I'd second that. Yeah.
All right. So, what about kind of the future? So right now we have, you know, NES project to become top 5 in Europe. You know, but in general, where do you see yourself in the future? Where do you go from there as well?
Yeah, I mean, within NES, you know, we've that goal to be top 5 in Europe is echoed on a global scale as well. So ultimately, I would like to be part of the global leadership team that gets us to that global top 5 position, right? You know, we're on that path at the moment, and it's an exciting prospect, right? To think about that. And you know, coming back to the career development prospects, there's you know, there's so much for me to personally stretch myself in order to get closer to that, in order to keep the momentum up, in order to us to, you know, deploy the solutions that we can do to our customers, you know, on that kind of scale. And you know, it gives the chance to be visionary as well right now, and to continue to be visionary, you know, probably even with a 10-year perspective there as well. You know, so I think as soon as I'm on top of the opportunities and the challenges, the horizon's just going to be pushed further forwards. You know, that's my expectation.
I like your wording there. As soon as I'm on top of it. It's not if, it's a matter of when.
I think if you persist, you know, if you keep going, and you know, in over 15 years, this has probably been my biggest lesson, right? If on a daily basis you bring the energy and the commitment to overcoming the smaller challenges that you encounter on a daily basis, if you just keep on doing that, then the amount of progress you can make, you know, when you think about years rather than weeks and months or days, it's really significant. It's really significant. So, you know, if you keep at it, if you keep looking at things from different angles to try the solutions, then I think you get there. I mean, eventually, I mean, we've all got a point at some point in our careers when we will stop working, right? Or a point in our careers where, you know, we may be doing, we may be on a different path. And I suppose at some, you know, whenever that might be, 20 years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows when, you know, I suppose I'd like to support other other types of companies, right? Companies outside of recruitment to maybe benefit from some of the experiences that I've had, to whether that's with a path to grow, how to scale, how to, commercialize something. And then, to spend more time related to my passions as well, maybe supporting people that have come from an underprivileged background, or initiatives around diversity, and, potentially even related to, to things like the outdoors, mountain biking and such. It's, it could be a nice thing to be involved in those things. Yeah, at some possible point.
Sounds like a very cool goal for the future, and for sure will be something very rewarding on a personal level. And yeah, sounds good. So coming up slowly towards the end, I guess got a last couple of questions for you. What would you say was your most unexpected moment? What is or what was the most unexpected?
Yeah, positive or negative?
Let's take one of each. One of each.
Yeah, sure. Okay, all right. There's always loads of unexpected moments, right, in what we do. It could be a candidate not accepting a role, or a customer relationship veering off the expected course, or maybe a team member that's really key. Deciding that there's that they don't want to be part of the business anymore, right? So they're all the typical ones. But on the lighter side of that, the positives, there was a moment actually at a Christmas event, right, a few years ago, where there was awards happening, right? There was some awards happening, and I was being nominated. Well, this was the unexpected thing. It was so far from my mind that I might be nominated for one of these annual awards that I think I was talking shop with somebody elsewhere, right? And I wasn't present.
Completely disinterested, yeah.
Well, almost, right? Excuse me for that, but yeah, almost. And it was just so far off my sphere of reference at the time, or in relation to what had been happening over that. Yeah, my mind was just on completely different things, and it was only when people started to congratulate me on being nominated that that I thought, wow, brilliant. That's isn't that nice? So I guess the lesson from that is, often there's people noticing what it is that you're trying to do. Even if it's not being, necessarily communicated on a daily basis. Like I said before, you keep trying to do something day in, day out, throwing energy and commitment to it, and you make progress. And sometimes, it's other people that notice that progress more than you do yourself necessarily. And that's been quite nice, right? At moments when that's happened. Yeah,
I think to be appreciated, acknowledged. But it's so important on a human level. And I remember in my first role in recruitment, when I went to Swisslinks, a local boutique here. I remember. I clearly remember in my first year, I think I had more praise and appreciation and recognition than I'd had in 5 years at the previous company, and it really helps motivate you, to drive you to build that kind of loyalty and commitment together. And recognition and awards are always a nice way in what is in recruitment can be a very competitive business, right? Compared to in a positive way also, compared to our peers and other people in the company, but also towards the competition, right?
For sure. Yeah. Do you know what? There was, if it's all right, I'd probably even just adjust my answer to that question. Yeah, sure. And the most unexpected moment was probably being asked into my boss's office, right, when I was in London, and being propositioned to move to the Netherlands, right? Because that was, it was retrospectively, it wasn't out of the blue at all. But again, it was just entirely unexpected, and it became quite a pivotal moment in my life and career so far, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it takes a lot of guts to do something like that. I mean, you know, I remember 18 years ago saying, okay, I'm going to move to Switzerland. You know, I was with my wife at the time, and she needed to come back and finish her studies, and you know, to make that commitment, so I'm going to move away from my friends, my family, go to a whole nother country where I don't know anyone really. It takes a lot of guts, and but I think has a lot of rewards as well. I think anyone who has the chance to travel, to live in another country, to experience other cultures, I think you develop so much as a human being that it's an amazing experience. So yeah, I encourage anyone who has the opportunity to do it.
Likewise.
So what about if I was to ask your team to describe you in 3 words, what do you think they would say?
Having had an awareness that this might be asked today, I actually jotted down my answer.
Okay.
And then I went and asked the team as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it would be really interesting to compare the answers, and you know, I made it very clear to them, first of all, that there'd be no impact or effect on their on their careers. Yeah. You know, but it obviously, you know, you never know if this is you know, if you're getting a completely objective answer. But
sure,
I was surprised by the response, to be honest. The 3 words that I noted, first of all, were analytical, driven, and responsible.
Okay.
Right. So
that was your own reflection.
It was, yeah.
Yep.
That was my own reflection, and I suppose these are 3 words that are quite dry in some regards, and quite, yeah, and you know, and quite, yeah, I mean, quite heavy in a way. You know, analytical. You know, looking into detail about things. Yeah, and the 3 that came back, you know, from, I think I had 7 or 8 answers back, and I looked at the most common themes, the most commonly used words, and they were honest, caring, and motivating.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So a real kind of, you know, it's a lot warmer, and it's a lot kind of more emotional and a lot more human than those 3 words that I used. Yeah. So I mean, there's probably a lesson for me there as well, and a lesson for us all potentially. To consider how we perceive ourselves isn't always how others perceive us. So yeah,
I think it's you know, it's rare as a manager or leader in any business to actually have direct feedback, right? You know, I think, you know, sometimes doing these, I don't know if you've ever done these 360 kind of feedback reviews, but even then, you know, it's not anonymous unless you have a huge team, right? So, you know, people are maybe gonna be slightly nicer, but, you know, I think that's a really good takeaway. You know, I think sometimes we perceive ourselves in a certain way, but perhaps forget some of the really good things or the most important things. You know, I'm sure that your team appreciate those 3 words much more than the 3 words that you gave to yourself.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it was you know, it's almost developmental, isn't it? You know, to type of, to see the difference between the 2 there. Yeah. So feedback is precious, the food of kings, and it's so valuable to have it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I could at least stimulate that thought and get you to go out there and maybe just to reflect for a moment on it. I think sometimes we don't, you know, we just don't take the time to step back for a second and reflect and think about things like this. So no.
Very true. So
Gareth, we are at the end of the session of the grilling. Hopefully I wasn't too harsh with some of the questions. And, you know, I've really enjoyed, and I'm sure everyone else has during the session, and will for those who watch this at a later time as well. You know, really some great insights into yourself and your journey, and some of the defining moments. So, you know, thank you very much for sharing, for indulging me and us on this session today. Yeah, I think next on your agenda? Exciting things coming up in the next weeks, months? Anything planned?
There's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, we're getting towards halfway through our financial year, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the point in the year where we look at the plans we made and make any necessary adjustments before throwing ourselves back into it. So there's a lot of exciting times, a lot of exciting projects that are happening right now. So, there's never a shortage of things to do, is there?
No, absolutely not. In our business, for sure not. When you're dealing with people, the most unpredictable business to be in, for sure.
Yeah.
So listen, Gareth, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time, and thank you everybody to who watched, who enjoyed the session. And I wish you all a lovely rest of the week or rest of the day. Let's say Friday, a great weekend ahead. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thanks again.
Thanks for having me, Lee. I've really enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad. Cheers, Gareth. See you, everyone.